There we go. And then this is where I have to learn new things. All right. Perfect. All right, folks. As they settle in, here they come. I'll lose my bar every time. Hello, everybody. I see you. I'm moving things around. Hello, hello. Oh, yes, JaneAnn, the chat is wild. So if you like to get in on there, please do. I highly recommend for a few minutes. Everyone likes to let us know where they're coming from and what's going on. Hello, everybody. Welcome from New Jersey. We got Chicago already. First timers in. Hello, BC. If you've never been on a webinar with me, I can't type and talk at the same time. It's like texting and talking. I can't do both.
Yes, I can understand that.
It's too much for me. Hello, Halifax, Portland.
Wow, New Jersey, Hawaii.
I know, it's everywhere.
Oregon, Tennessee, Illinois.
Fantastic.
New York City, Belize.
Hi, Texas. You guys have power.
Texas, yes.
I hope everyone, actually mentioning Texas, I hope everyone who's joining us from Texas or even down that way, that you guys are doing okay. I know the last couple of days have been absolutely wild, and from power outages to boil water effects for you guys, it's been something that's maybe just out of the, or very much out of the ordinary. So I hope everyone's doing okay down that way. So I'm sure we can all join. Massachusetts. Hello, Arizona.
First Nation.
Right? The crew that comes through is fantastic this way. Obviously we have JaneAnn on with us, folks. She's here. She's ready to talk to us a little bit more. If you haven't listened to her podcast that she did with Ron, I know Ron was saying to me the other day, I was chatting with him and he enjoyed it so much. And the personality in Ron, I love chatting with him, as well as hearing his background. His piece of the story is so fascinating for me, but he loves chatting with people like you, JaneAnn, and having further conversation about what educators can do for themselves. And it's a huge piece here. So, all right, Australia. I was wondering if we were going to have any people out from that way today. So JaneAnn, we've had people in the past from Ghana. We do get some people down from Jamaica. We get people from all over the UK. It's awesome.
I've actually been able to visit Australia, New Zealand, and several places for early childhood, so they feel like family.
Oh, that's fun. I haven't made it out to like the Australia area. I had friends of ours who they moved to New Zealand for a year, 2 years, and they loved it. And then they came home for a bit just to get a bit of a change up with life. So,
It's beautiful.
Well, I see more Texas, some more. Here we go. Michigan. Hey. Hello, everyone. A minute or two more, and then we're gonna get into everything and get started. As always, folks, we are recording. So if you are wondering, the big record is on. And now I say this and I always double check at the same time. Recording is definitely happening, and you guys will get everything tomorrow. Show notes will come out with slides, certificate, everything, but I'll go over all of that fun stuff in a minute. Hello, Brampton. We've got Albuquerque.
Hi,
My last trip was to Albuquerque last March, folks. No word of a lie.
Jamaica.
Yeah, there we go. Exciting. Hello, Virginia, Oakville.
Freezing. More Texas.
I bet you guys, it's freezing here. It's white out, snowy conditions, but we're of course very used to that. That's what you guys are not. All right, one more minute, folks, and then we're gonna get started. Last week, we almost broke the bank here. Hello, Barbados. We had, we had about, I forget the number, just over almost 1,300 people joined us last week. So
wow.
Yeah, I thought we might break the internet. So hello, Ottawa, Curve Lake.
Ooh, Melbourne.
There we go. Some more folks in. All right. I think let's get started. This is exciting. I love Thursdays as well, folks. For anybody who obviously gets our show notes and you've taken the time to fill out our survey that's within the show notes, we have read your feedback. I have definitely heard it. I also felt so like it was a great pick me up when I was reading all of your amazing feedback that I was getting from there. So about content, it was fantastic. So please, folks, take some time if you haven't. We are going to send it out again this week in the show notes for you guys to take some time to just let us know anything you want to hear more about, what good things you have heard in the past, you want us to make any changes. And last but not least, we have some live transcript happening here today so that we can help just make the session a little bit more accessible for our folks who need that. So if you have any ideas around that you'd love to offer up, I'd love to hear it. So please take some time to fill out our survey. Once again, it will come out with the show notes tomorrow. So let's get started. As always, we are not legal or financial advice. I don't know about JaneAnn, how she feels about it, but I do. I didn't go to law school. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure you guys are taking away great things you can implement at your center or for yourself personally. But if you're ever looking for advice, whether that be financial or legal advice, just to make sure that you guys are taking those to the right folks, whether that be your licensing rep or financial advisor of any kind. So just make sure you're including all those right people in your decisions. Next up, housekeeping. I had mentioned this guy before, but I just want to make sure I mention again, session is being recorded, so you don't need to worry if you do have to duck out halfway through. Sorry, you might have to leave us, but we also know life happens. You can check out the recording tomorrow. The certificate, you can either get it here this afternoon at the end of the session. We will be providing it for you to save. And if not, if you have to run out, and don't worry, I will send it out with the show notes tomorrow, which you'll get the slides, the recording, all the links, everything that you'll be included here today. And last but not least, if you're having any trouble, please, 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 please don't ask me for help. I'm sorry. Please go to support.zoom.us. They're their best people. They know their program the best. I'm still learning, you're still learning. We're doing this together. But they'll be your best support, especially on your end, and especially with the tech that you have. So I'm very much I'm an HP user. So, all right. If you've never been with us before, great intros to come here. I'm Maria. I'm one of the early childhood educators here at Hi Mama. I'm also a community ambassador here. And I've been with Hi Mama for just about 3 years. I don't have any fun facts today. I feel like we've given most of them up. I need to come up with more, folks. We've almost been home for a year, work from home. That's not really fun, but it is at the same time. Kaya is on with us as well. I know she's going to make a special appearance. Kaya is my colleague here at Hi Mama, and she's also an ECE, works on our social media, she's on our Facebook group. I'm on our Facebook group. Kaya, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I actually have a fun fact for today. I was thinking of it on my walk here before the webinar. So fun fact, it was a little, I think yesterday was World Kindness Day. And I was really taking that to heart, especially with given everything that's going on with COVID and Texas and everything like that. I really wanted to make someone's day special. So I was at the drugstore picking up stuff for myself, and there was a homeless man outside, and I gave him some of my change, and then I realized, is there anything I can get you? The things he wanted, I'm sure they weren't too expensive. So I asked him, and he actually just wanted batteries for his little radio that he had. He loved listening to the radio. So he's like, can you just get me some AA batteries? I'm like, of course. And then I was like, is there any food that you want or anything? And he said he wanted a Coke and a chocolate bar. So I got him that. And I hope that made his day. He was so happy to have his batteries. So it made my day. That was really heartwarming. So if you have anything, pass it on to your neighbors and your friends and see if there's any way you can help out. It definitely warmed my heart. So if you have a special story like that, share it with us in the chat.
You warmed my heart, Kaya. Now I need to up my game for next week. This is super exciting. I love this. I love every bit about this. And for folks who don't know Kaya at all very much, she spends a lot of time walking. That is her go-to for obviously stress relief, as well as just to get out. It's really important these days. I know a lot of us are stuck at home. Please get outside and be as physical as you can to help keep your mental your mental, physical, all in one go. If you want to learn a little bit more about Hi Mama before we jump in here, please check us out at himama.com. Kyle will probably post it in the chat here for you. But if you want to learn a little bit more about us and look at joining the Hi Mama family, I highly recommend you checking us out, as well as for podcasts, blog posts, anything. All of that is on our website, folks. So up today here, our special guest, our ECE of the year. I'd mentioned this before. We'd rocked and rolled that you had done a podcast with us as well, but we have JaneAnn Benson. She's a founder. She's an oh my goodness, I should have put a different word. Early childhood ally here. She's an activist for educators, I should say. But maybe JaneAnn, start with telling us, I could go into, but you're here with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about you and maybe just how you got started with early ed?
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is, I've been in the field for over 35 years. The first half of it was in for-profit work and in early childhood. So I worked with infants and toddlers and preschoolers and school agers. And in that role, I moved into leadership. And then 20 years ago, I was so fortunate to be able to move to Grand Rapids Community College in their early childhood learning lab, where I got really my dream job. And in my dream job there, it was working with families and as the director and leader there, and working with families and children, college students, the community. We're star rated and accredited program. And from there, really worked with this really rock star team of teachers. And then this past summer, I retired or moved into semi-retirement because I stayed on at Grand Rapids Community College and work as a coach and mentor in the Play and Learn program there. And I just have found it really delightful to be doing that work also within our community. So I feel like I have a pretty well-rounded background working with all different ages, lots of different grant programs, early Head Start. In our community, it's Great Start Readiness, 3-year-old programming, and also working with our general public too. So it's been a long career, and it's really my passion.
This is why you're here.
I'm
right. excited. Yeah, this is why we're here. I'm so excited. So today you're going to be talking a little bit more, obviously, about advocating, some of your takeaways that you've had from the pandemic and kind of how as an educator, how you can get involved. And I think these are some huge pieces that we were talking about a little bit before we started the webinar here, but I'm excited to just hand it over to you. So folks, I'm going to hand it over and then we'll jump into some Q&A at the end. So awesome.
So first I started the Early Childhood Ally on Instagram, and that was really started as a challenge from my students and families and coworkers. And that was about 18 months ago, and really wanted to develop this space that was able to mirror the field. So what does best practice look like? Leadership tips. And little did I know the pandemic was right around the corner, and that this idea of building a sense of community. So the Early Childhood Ally space really was developed because of that. And I did not have social media or Facebook or anything. So that was a big step into it. And it really was my advocacy to be able to be that ally for early childhood teachers and programs and that. But really, what I was able to do is think about this, because COVID really has made us think about what's the good part that we can take away from this, because I think there's a lot of really challenging things that have happened during COVID, but what's the opportunity? And that's something that I really like to be able to think about and to create a space for. So the first part, a big pandemic takeaway, is this idea that early childhood education is essential. The whole idea that it came under the essential workers, and that overall what we found is that what we've always known is that without early childhood and childcare, the economy can't keep going. And so we really had a chance to play that out in real time during COVID. And so this is hopefully something that we can build on from an advocacy standpoint. The second part, a key takeaway for me around the pandemic, and one of the really wonderful things about the Early Childhood Ally Instagram page and website is being able to really this idea of this community that percolates all these ideas. And the things that I kept coming back to were that this is going to be a really important time for us to reflect, to really slow down, really begin to think about, what is it that's working? What's working right now? And asking our stakeholders, asking our families, ourselves, our teachers, our what's working with the children, really taking time to reflect, not rushing that at all. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's one thing that we often do, is that we're so busy. We talked about this just recently. We get so busy that we forget how important that reflection time is. The next part about it is reimagining. And for us right now, I think it's going to be important for us to really take time to dream big. I think that the same idea that we found out, and we've always known that early childhood is essential, but how do we capture that now? How do we reimagine taking what we've reflected on and reimagining what is working in our programs, and how do we elevate that? How do we advocate for more of that? And it can be simple things too. I don't want us to overthink. So it can be, what we really found is that we need to get back to more developmentally appropriate practice. Our block area needs to do more. So we don't have to overthink it, but really, what is it? What's something we can do that is going to have an impact? The reset is being able to really think about, and this is really important, how do we reset at the same time that we're sort of resting with what's going on? That whole idea of reflection, going back to the whole being able to rest with it. Is it really working? Can we reset it? And I would say too, as I was thinking about this, the fourth takeaway is rejoicing. And when I looked back at when I was really thinking about this workshop and this time together, is when I looked back at all my messages and the work, it was really trying to find a space within our community to be able to really rejoice. It has been a very, very difficult time for families, for teachers, for programs, and people who've done it both virtual, in person. It doesn't matter who and how you're delivering it, family child care programming, Head Start, everybody, it has been very challenging. So a pandemic takeaway is also this idea of resting and resetting, but also being able to rejoice in the victories that have happened, because it's been hard. And so I think that part of it's really important. So I would, so when we think about advocating as early childhood educators, I think one of the reasons early childhood educators are really reaching out is that we're all things COVID this year. And so spending a lot of time listening and striving to understand the challenges, but also being a critical friend during this time, during COVID, of being able to really think about how do we still stay innovative and advocate for best practice. And because we've spent so much energy on some more of the health and safety things, how do we continue to bubble up the other parts of programming? But advocating as early childhood educators, this idea of what we do really matters, and that we are the experts. And sometimes it's fair when people say that people don't, really see us as important. I hope that the pandemic takeaway of us being essential really is that spark that we need to say what we do really does matter, and we really are the experts, and that we really have this larger impact than we often remember. And by that, I think about this idea of our circle of influence. And the circle of influence, when I think about it, is we have our families in our classrooms or families in our program. And if we talk to all of them about something, how then if they talk to someone else and then they talk to someone else, and that idea of creating that influence that way, that we really can have quite an impact on something. Also taking that idea into a smaller idea with advocacy. So the idea, 1 year an advocacy thing I did was an internal thing with a staff, wanting them to feel appreciated. And so that was something that then when I shared that with other directors and other programs, that my circle of influence not only was with my own staff, but with a bigger group too. So that was a really important part about it. And that relationships create influence, and that part of advocating is creating those relationships that people trust what you're going to say. And so they know who to go to. You're the expert. And that sometimes when we are advocating for something, whatever that is, so I think it's important that you really decide what that is. It can be something as small as that I'm going to advocate for more family programming or more infant toddler board books for the classroom or more resources, or that I get a break, that I'm not getting a break every day. I'm going to really advocate for that. And then the relationships of causing that influence are really important. Who is it you're trying to influence? Is it the director? Is it the families? Or if you think bigger, so a bigger way in which that happens too is in our community, our county has a millage that's just for early childhood, over $5 million just for early childhood. And so that was really something that we all worked on together to be at those relationships and our families and how that bubbled out those circle of influence. So being intentional about what it is that you're trying to influence and advocate for. But as an early childhood educator, a lot of those things are right in your own classroom. You know, that advocating for that family with making sure they have the resources, advocating that you're able to have play-based programming in your classroom. So I think being able to be intentional about that and really think about it, but also that change takes a lot of time, and doing that in partnership with someone else is helpful. So I think that idea of advocating as an early childhood educator, we have the scripts, and sometimes we might need help on those though, honestly. So what is it that you're really trying to say? And you might need a partner to be able to go to and say, well, how do I say that in a different way? So I think that part of it is really important. So how do you get involved? And I talked about this just a minute ago about scripts. And so you really need to think about having a script. So when someone says, well, why do you get in early childhood? You know, that, you know, when are you going to get a real job? And how you need to have a script for that. But also a script for why it's really important for developmentally appropriate practice. So when you get those small scripts and templates that when people ask you something, it's so much easier than having to think off the top of your head. And so I really encourage part of getting involved with anything that you're going to advocate for, even if it's in your classroom, in your building, in your community, that you have these short scripts that you can go to. I mean, sometimes people might call them like elevator speeches. So you have that 1 minute one, that 2 minute one, that 3 minute one. So really to think about that. It seems fairly fundamental, but a big way in which we get involved with advocating is by voting. And I'm always a little surprised when I work with early childhood educators and I just anonymously ask who votes, and it's quite low. And so really helping people to feel more empowered about voting and how important voting matters. And I often start with in the community, why voting for the county commissioner is really important, because the park that they're going to send their children to or go to on a field trip, the county commission is the one who's going to fund that. So helping people to see how their vote really matters locally to start with really helps. Or for me in a college, really being able to say, well, the board of trustees is really important. And so when I'm going to advocate for a really excellent program and for their support, I want to make sure that I'm voting accordingly. Children are bipartisan, so this is important to keep in mind with voting, that this is not a political, and I think right now with advocacy, people get fairly scared about the word advocacy, and it feels really intimidating, like that's not something I do. I didn't learn about it in school, or I don't know how to do it. So this idea of staying informed is much easier now with Google and the internet, and being able to go quickly to see what the issues are, and both sides, and being able to have an informed vote. So that part of it is. I think another way to get involved that's fairly easy is having visitors to your building or your classroom, or going to visit different people within the community. So an example is, we would visit different people on campus and be able to make those connections about what we did and why we did it. But this can be done in a neighborhood or any early childhood program, making people aware of what it is and what you're doing and why you're doing it. So those scripts come back into why that's important. So how do you in 1 minute explain how, when you are bringing someone this plant that the children planted and have, why that's an advocacy thing, why it's really important that children do science, and you have to be able to quickly be able to articulate that. Some other ways that we get involved with advocacy is really around professional development. And every time we go to a professional development, like today when you're here, or when you picked professional development, that's a big way in which we advocate and we learn more and bring back to our classrooms or to our programs. Joining professional organizations that are in our industry. Many of us, it's NAEYC, or there's many other ones, but that's probably one that I hope that I'm not employed by them, but I hope that many people are but that might be a first step, how you get involved. And I often say, let's start really small, make just a monthly commitment to advocacy about getting involved, and think about, how do I do that just on a monthly commitment, 1 hour a month? That's 15 minutes a week to devote to it. And when we think of small things like that, how I'm going to do one more family program in our classroom that is more play-based, or I'm going to advocate in our community for a park for children who there's not a park close to where they live. So really thinking about, how do I break that down into smaller steps? I think the other piece that we need to think about is, how do we join together to do that? So it talks about joining professional organizations. In Michigan, where I'm at, there's an Association for the Education of Young Children, local group and statewide group that has advocacy committees that are really eager to have more people engaged with them. So I really think that that part of it is also important, but most important, just start somewhere, and really think about, what is it, when we went back to that reflection, what is it? This is a wonderful time, as difficult as it has been. It's a wonderful time to reset your program yourself as an early childhood educator. So what is it that I really want to advocate for? Is it, higher pay? Is it more vacation days? Is it that I have more professional development? I think that's the part every person has to decide for not only themselves, but their program that they work for. But it may be a community initiative too, that's an early childhood thing that you're going to advocate for. And certainly there's national issues and international issues. And having been fortunate enough to be able to travel throughout the world, there are every community has them. You know, it doesn't matter if you're from Grand Rapids, Michigan, or Chicago, Illinois, or wherever you're from, is that there are many ways to get involved locally, but certainly on a national stage too, to be able to do it. So I think that part of this idea of how does that influence happen? And the stories matter. That's one of the things that I really found, is that legislators, boards, presidents of organizations, local economy, they want to hear the story of how early childhood made a difference. The local school district wants to know how, you know, you're doing math. So being able to really lean into that is really important. And it really is part of being a professional. And one of the things we were talking about before we got started is, I think that's one of our challenges that we really have to, again, get back to that reflection piece, is that we're so busy doing the work, and it's so important, the work is, but we don't talk enough about how do we move ourselves as a field. And this advocacy for not only the day-to-day work, but the bigger work overall is critical. And so I really challenge everyone again to that, get back to that commitment of how do you do it, and really do it in this these short little nuggets, and partner up with another teacher, your director, another director. Maybe it's that you've never had a director's meeting in your community, and that's what you partner up to have. Like, we're going to host and invite other directors to do that. And so I think that has to be individual, what you decide, but then it's putting into you know, the steps to get it done. So I really do think that there's a lot of ability out there to be able to do it. And the other piece is advocacy can be fun. I think we think about like, oh, you have to be, you know, go and on the Capitol steps or whatever it is. And it's really, it does not need to be that active out there. It really can be that idea of how do I make it fun? So how do we put the children's artwork up in all of the windows in the downtown area and put up, you know, it's Week of the Young Child. So that's, you know, March is right around the corner, and that's Reading Month. That's a really kind of easy one to be able to do some advocacy around, about maybe doing a reading project with families, or Week of the Young Child comes in April. And so really thinking ahead, how do I do that? And just start. And I'm always available for a DM or for an email to be able to say, you know, this is what I'm struggling with. How do you think I might be able to do it? And to do a little brainstorming. I believe that everybody has the answer, you know, how it's going to be, that people just need to be encouraged. And that right now we have a lot of compassion fatigue going on, that the teachers and the people that we've been working in the front lines are just tired. And this is a time I feel like that reflection and rest and celebration of that rejoicing, but also being able to get back and saying, okay, what is it? What is it that I can do? Being specific, how am I going to move forward with it? So that would be some of the things that I would right off, you know, think about doing to help get involved. And I feel like the other piece we don't talk very much about, and I won't say too much about it, is that when you do advocate, it really does a lot for you. You know, so you also get a lot from it. So when you advocate for that family who that child needed resources, that it fills you up too. And right now I feel like we need that. When you do, if your thing is that you really want to be able to show more appreciation for the staff that you work with, that it will make you feel good too. And obviously there's big advocacy things that are out there also. But when you start to say, something we advocated for was a better outside environment after visiting New Zealand and Australia and seeing some really dynamic outdoor spaces. And so how do you do that, and being able to really think about that? So, and really being able to advocate, and then seeing it come into fruition that there's this beautiful outdoor space for children to grow and learn and families to see. So there's a big payoff for yourself too. And I think that part of it is important to keep in mind, that it's not just another thing to do, but it is part of being a professional in early childhood.
I almost forgot to unmute myself. JaneAnn, that was fantastic. And you want to maybe carry on some of the conversation, especially that we were having beforehand. I feel like many people, and we had said this before, you don't know really where to start. And I think from what you were saying here, I was even taking away key pieces, and I'm not afraid to admit, I didn't really get as involved with advocating, if any, because I was really underinformed, but I also did not take the time to look at it. And I think that's a huge piece right now is just start small and go from there. And it's a huge step for you, and you're able to roll the ball in areas that you're obviously very passionate about as well. So
right, I think that part is really, until this semi-retirement, I just said, you work from dawn to dusk, it just is the work. And so it is hard sometimes to think about how am I going to be able to do that? So being able to pick smaller things, I also have often picked a theme for the year around advocacy, around that helped me to be able to think about it that way. And so when I could say, okay, a theme for this year, and it was also, we were looking at trying to have a building built. So the advocacy was, how do I get people on board to have this happen? Because you don't start with, oh, we're going to have a building built, but instead, how do I help to be a good ally and invite every dean and every the provost and the president to everything we had, and we send them Valentines from the children, and, we send them updates. So you can start small, and that just happens to be in a college environment, but
yes,
this same ideas were I sit on a lot of boards for child care programs. And so, that looks different in those spaces, but I really challenge, sometimes when you can have it, the outdoor spaces, the advocacy project, that's something that's going to happen, or we just need more books. Like it doesn't need to be like this huge project, but we just need more high quality early childhood books for our infant and toddler room. So how do we do that? And that becomes more bite-sized. And
yes,
so I feel like sometimes we get lost in this idea of it has to be this huge project, and it doesn't. I mean, we can, because there's lots of those to pick from. And that's when you go back to that reflection. And this idea during the pandemic really gives us time. We've done things differently than we've ever done during the pandemic. And so I think it has forced me to think about how do we be innovative during this time of thinking about doing things different, and especially around advocacy. How do we continue to do that and not just get lost in saying, oh, I can't have it? And so that's, I think, one of the things that I've gotten better at is being that critical friend to someone who reaches out and says, well, I can't do that. We don't do, sensory that way. And to say, okay, but how can we do that? How can we work with families? How can we work with, maybe people who we wouldn't have necessarily partnered with before in the past. And there are a lot of people. I do go to legislative breakfasts and all that sort of thing. And one of the things I said is, grandparents were one of the big ones that I didn't always think about how influential they could be. They are at a lot of the legislative lunches and breakfasts and coffees. And so I really thought a lot about how do we have grandparents who are raising their grandchildren, but how do we partner more with other groups in our advocacy efforts? And so thinking about it in that way, but just start, just start. And when you pick something that's close to what you're passionate about, be it immunizations or nutrition, that you're just going to work on nutrition in your program for this year or for the next 6 months and going to really drill down on it, then it helps you to be able, like anything, once you're like, okay, and think about, how many Mondays do I have in the next year in which to do it, and to be able to also, I think that when we talked about partnering, I think that's an important part too, that I was so fortunate to be able to work with staff, many who were really okay being a partner with that work of advocacy, that could we do this together? Then it doesn't feel so lonely. And right now, I think people in early childhood are feeling a little lonely.
100%.
Yeah, they're feeling really lonely. And so when you're like, could we work on this together? There's something about that creates a real sense of belonging and connection. And we all need that, and particularly more than ever. So I do think that would be something I would lean into, of thinking about how do I partner with someone, or in another program too. I think we sometimes get so drilled into our own silo of our own program. And I found sometimes the real magic happened when connected with other programs, and we could all work together for an activity, be it, we did, street fairs where, when people could still gather, but pre-COVID, and those days will happen again. And I think we need to position ourselves to think about, what is it? How do we want it to look? We are the people. Things will be decided with or without us. Yep. I mean, that is the truth. That legislation is going to happen. Schools are going to decide how learning is going to, and unless we influence that, and we will be the ones who have to follow along. So it's going to be important that our voice is steady and consistent. So I feel like right now is a time to, rest up, and really be able to rejoice at the hard work that's been done. But we really need to reflect on what is it, and that's very individual. Every program, every person individually has to know what that is. I can certainly brainstorm with you though, if you're not sure, ask you some hard questions. And so weekly, I do like a journal prompt on my stories for people, for this very reason, that sometimes you need that critical friend, you need that colleague who asks the hard questions, like, well, why don't you have, enough sensory materials? Like, what's gotten in the way of that? And saying, well, have you talked to families? Have you talked to a local foundation? Whatever it is. And so I think being able to lean into that during this time is really important.
I think it's huge. And I also just wanted to tag in with a couple of pieces throughout the chat about connecting with your parents too. Like, obviously we had mentioned grandparents, but yes, if you have parents who are, and even if you have parents who are in a position of some kind that can just help echo the voice too, I think that's hugely powerful. And as well, when they're on board, because usually, if you say, we're advocating for, let's say, more sensory materials at our center for the next couple of months, parents are usually pretty on board with that pretty quickly. At least I would hope so.
Absolutely. Like, and I think that we can really leverage that, and that they're excited about it too once they understand why it's so important. And they feel really, we want to build belonging, and we want to build community. And my friends in New Zealand, Australia, that was something that I just thought, wow, they get it so right with how they create these sense of belonging and community. And that really came from, including everybody. And so how do we do that on our advocacy things? And it's a win-win. Like, how great, what part doesn't work well when you have more awesome, infant toddler books, or sensory, or a great outdoor space, or just showing more appreciation for your team. So I think that you have to figure out what it is and then work through that system. Certainly big advocacy requires voting, and that it's really like two buckets. So it is important, but I would really challenge everyone to take an hour to really think about it. Even, if you work with others, ask them, what would it look like? What, reimagine, what do we want it to look like? If we don't know, how in the world is someone else going to be able to advocate for us? And so I really challenge us all to ask that hard question.
JaneAnn, this has been fantastic. We've had a couple of questions come
Sure.
through, so I definitely want to jump
Sure.
into there. And I don't know, maybe if you could enlighten us maybe a little more about some of the things you've advocated in the past. But for a couple of educators have been asking about, of course, potentially advocating for better pay or better benefits or something along those lines. Do you have like any ideas or any starting points for folks that are interested in potentially taking? For me, I think this is a huge step personally, but for potentially taking that step and getting a pretty big voice out.
Sure. I think the pay piece is essential, that we are not going to keep people in the field unless people are making a living wage. I was fortunate this past 20 plus years at a college where they did believe in that, but still needed to advocate for wages to be higher. And I think the biggest piece is trying to figure out who is the person in control of that. So if it's the owner, then it's being able to have data of what is it you're asking for? How much is it that you're hoping to have? What suggestions or solutions do you have? So is there another way for there to be stipends? How much would you have to raise tuition by to get that? And being able to break it down and to really think about that is important. Does it come with higher credentialing? Does it, you really have to find the data. And this is the part that sometimes people get really lost in, is like, I don't have time to find that out. But someone probably already has that data for you. So recently I worked with on a board of a local childcare program, and some of the staff ended up getting $3 more an hour when we were able to get the data of what a living wage looked like, and being able to then say, okay, how do we do that? Yes, we did raise tuition, but not as significant. We really looked at summer and school age programming and how we leverage that. Got some grants to be able to cover some other costs, so that money could go towards staff. The benefit of it is that staff didn't leave, and so we didn't have this constant carousel of being able to have more professional development, more orientation. So there were payoffs of being able to show what that looked like. So that is really challenging, but people feel free to email me or DM me about that specifically. And I'm more than glad to be able to help brainstorm your own specific. Some of it is, some people are on a contract, and that's much more complicated, but it can be done. It's just much more complicated what that looks like comparatively to maybe a program that works, with an owner or that sort of a setup.
I feel like your inbox is going to be flooded by the time the end of this webinar.
Well, that's okay. That's what I'm here for.
So I wanted to ask, because I feel like it may not really be as known, but maybe for you, why do you think it's really important that educators learn a little bit more about advocating and get involved with it, especially now that COVID's happened, and of course, so many things have changed over the last almost year or full year around, depending on where you've been. But why do you think it's so important?
Well, the big thing I would say is if you aren't, no one else is going to. So, and I know that having worked in this field for 35 years, I get it. I get, people saying, when, is it a real job? And, when are you going to, you have a master's degree, when are you really going to get a real job? And all of that, I understand that. But if you don't, who is going to? And people are going to make decisions about what happens in early childhood. Legislation is going to happen, school districts, your own building, it is all going to happen. So I think once I got more comfortable with that idea, licensing is going to change that policy if we don't say what we want or need. And so really feeling like, who is going to tell this story but us? Like, I have the evidence, I have the data, I know this. And that really strengthened my muscle. And that is something I say, people who work with me will chuckle, but that, our muscle's not strong at all around advocacy. It just isn't. And that we need to strengthen it. And so that's why I think doing those small pieces is like those little exercises to lead up to the big one, to lead up to, the marathon. And it's not a sprint. There is going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be, I would say, when we talk about pay, there's times that it's been 4 or 5 times before we've actually been able to get the pay to where we feel more comfortable. So remembering that we really have to think about this idea of starting and then being consistent with it and being able to keep that message going. And so more than ever, that things are going to continue to shift. COVID has been a game changer. And so be it remote learning, be it health and safety, I hear, daily with practices that really probably aren't as developmentally appropriate as we would hope. So things are going to change, and we really need to be leveraged and comfortable being able to shift and being able to elevate ourselves to say, no, we really are essential. The economy cannot work without us. So how do we really use this platform right now? There's never been another time in at least in my 35 years, where there's been this opportunity to say, no, you know what? We are essential to the economy working, and we're essential to families. And we were the ones, holding families up, the mental health of families and children. And that's not going to just disappear in a week or a month. We're post-COVID is going to have its own things to navigate too. So I feel like that is going to be one of the biggest reasons we're going to really have to advocate. We're going to have to get straight what it is we believe. And so again, I'm going to flip back to that whole reflection piece. You really have to reflect on what is it that you want your program, and don't be afraid. Don't go small. I think that's the other thing that we're so used to, like, oh, well, we can. One example, I had someone on a board of another program, and they were like, well, can anyone donate some iPads to the room? Yep, the other program in the same thing, they were like ordering new iPads. I'm like, well, why are they ordering new iPads and we're asking for donations? Like, we should be asking for what we really want and need. And I think we're just so used to asking for less. And that we can get by with, going to the Dollar Tree, which I love the Dollar Tree, but I really, really do. I love the Dollar Tree. But, we don't we don't have to think small. We really need to think bigger. And we really need to think about what is it that we really need and want to do this work at the level we need to do. Teachers being paid at a living wage is one of those things. Staff having the professional development that they need. They having the equipment, the resources that they need. You know, all of those things are part of being essential. But, you know, we don't talk about that with nursing or healthcare, you know, like, oh, well, what can we get? You know, can we pay them less, you know, or do they not need, I mean, when they didn't have PPE equipment, you know, like it just can't be done. So I think we need to continue to think bigger. You know, I think in the beginning I'm saying, you know, do these small things, but we also, I mean, I think our, how we think about what we're going to do is going to be critical, that we really advocate for what it is we really want and need, and do not lowball yourself. You know, like you need to really think, what is it and how do we get there? And you know, part of that's confidence, you know, that we need to build that muscle of that we know. And what I found is that people respect that, you know, and that then they're like, well, tell me more, you know, be it the legislator, the commissioner, whoever that is, a family, that you explain why it is what you're doing and how you're doing it and why it's important. They get on board with that, you know, and I get it though. I get that people, that we're all really fatigued, and compassion fatigue is a real thing. And so part of what we, you know, part of what advocacy might look like is self-care, you know, how, you know, and that's one of the things, you know, I hope to continue to do is offer that, you know, how do we do that self-care and lean into our community and don't give up, and you know, all of those things that, yeah, those are like easy one-liners, but the hard stuff is the digging in and doing it, and being motivated at the end of, you know, a really long day. So when you embed it in the work, it makes it so much easier, and ideally, you know, that your, you know, your coworkers and that will come on board with it too. Just to not minimize. I think we're great at doing that, you know, minimizing what we do, and we really need to be loud and proud. You know, that
I agree. I am loud. JaneAnn, it's been fantastic. It just, everything in the chat right now, I have the pleasure of seeing and hearing at the same time, and having you here today. It's been phenomenal having you once again be a part and joining in on a Hi Mama activity here with us. But I wanted to ask before we end up and wrap up here, is there any last pieces of advice, words of wisdom, happy thoughts you want to leave all the folks with today?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is that we're really at a crossroads right now, and it's going to be essential that everybody in early childhood takes a really good look at what we're doing and think about how do we really elevate for families and children and staff and our community, so that at the end of it, we can say, you know, we're better. And I do feel like COVID exposed a lot of the weaknesses in early childhood. And so this gives us an opportunity, when we talk about that reimagine part, to really reimagine and making that commitment to do it. Couple quick things. On my website, there is a COVID document. It's like 60 pages long. It's really all of the posts that were on my Instagram page, all in one PDF. So it has some data in there and that. So that's out there if people are interested in that. I also, there's an advocacy into action, like more like a PowerPoint for some of more of the down and dirty of the work, you know, like just like working through like how's the law become, you know, happening and all of that. But let me know if there's other things that people need and want. As I said, I'm not on Facebook, and I understand you have a Facebook that is really happening right now. And so I would love, though, if there's people who have further questions from you guys
I
to
can
be able to
pass
push them back. Yep.
Yep. I can.
Otherwise, yep, please don't hesitate to check out my website. I also have a newsletter that does a deep dive into everything I post that month. So because Instagram is instant and it's just a little snapshot. So I do a deeper dive into topics that I had more information on. So love to have people sign up for that, but follow along on my Instagram page or that. But if there's things that people want, my goal is really to be able to be their ally and to be able to help. So this is the idea of building a community.
JaneAnn, thank you so much.
Sure.
You're going to have a flooded inbox. I know that. So I'm super excited, folks, for you joining us today. It's been fantastic. I know Kaya has already posted this, but let's jump into some wrap up. The certificate will be in the chat. So you just need to click on it, folks, download it as a PDF. You can pop in your name, your center name, you'll be done. If you haven't had a chance, won't have a chance, don't fret. It will be in the show notes email tomorrow for you, along with the slides, the recording, and any resources. We're going to link out for you to connect with JaneAnn. So whether you want to do it via Instagram or you want to go to her site, we will make sure to get that out there. And then any questions, if you guys have sent them along, we hadn't had a chance to answer, I'm going to pass them on to you and we'll get them back and we'll post them on the Facebook for you. Next week, we're talking about going digital. Folks, we're bringing Amanda back next week. I'm super excited. She's going to talk about her story, why she chose to go digital. She was very against it and she's ready to, she made the jump and she obviously came on with here at Hi Mama, but we wanted to dive into her story. So we have some 8 steps for you to take away next week, as well as her fantastic story. So I'm super excited to welcome her back again. If you haven't, please join us on Facebook. We're going to be there after this as well. So if you do have any other questions, I'm more than happy to take them on here for JaneAnn, as well as if you haven't joined us, please do. You do need to make sure you answer the questions though to join us, folks. So if maybe Kaya, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's anything I'm missing on this side, but we've had tons of people join us, especially recently. I feel like it's been a flood.
Yeah, thank you, Ria. It's been absolutely an amazing community. There's been so many amazing questions in there. So we have a few moments. I know we didn't get a chance to answer everyone's questions today, but please pop onto our Facebook. Just make sure that you answer the questions and also agree to the rules. We want to keep it a very safe space for all of our amazing members. I'm popping it in. I know there's a lot of stuff happening in the chat right now. If you just go to Facebook and search Hi Mama or Circle Time, it'll pop up. You can find us and we'll catch you in there, and can't wait for some amazing questions and ideas. The chat's been going off again. I've been loving it.
It's part of, I would say it's my favorite part, but it's one of I have so many favorite pieces from the webinars. Like
maybe I need to maybe now I need to think about Facebook.
Okay, I don't do Instagram and Kai is doing the get on Instagram, Ria. So it's I feel you. If you want to listen to JaneAnn's podcast with us that she did with Ron, we're also going to include that in the show notes tomorrow. It was a fantastic listen. It was part of what pumped me up here to chatting with you today. So I was super excited, but please check it out. That's it for us, folks. Please, thank you for coming. Enjoy yourselves over the next couple of days, weekend. Please stay healthy, stay safe. JaneAnn, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody. We'll give you one last second here with the link and then we'll be off. Have yourselves a fantastic week, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.